Betty was born and raised in California. She is a visual artist, news reporter for Cougar News, and she's also a student at College of Canyons. All while, and I want to hear more about this, while owning and running a non-profit organization that benefits homeless people and animals.
Wow.
So that sounds like a great program.
Yes, it does.
We're going to keep her contact information and invite her back every week.
Is she talking about electricity next week?
There's a lot of homeless people and homeless animals too. Ruben Varela is her engineer. He graduated from Cal State Northridge with a science degree. He's been teaching elementary children for 3 years.
23.
Oh, 23. 23 years. Wow. He's also a lifelong musician and a songwriter, and he does sound engineering. So, our moderator who will lead this discussion is Colleen Riffo. She is a Rotarian, a member of this club. She's also a career artist in the animation industry. She goes way back to when they used to paint cartoons on cells. In fact, she's still doing cells. She just completed a set of cells for the Schultz family, painting Snoopy on top of a haystack in our kitchen for the past 3 months.
I'm not done with that.
She's a relatively new Rotarian, but she has been applying Rotarian values her whole life, as many of you in this room do. Our speakers. On my far left, Maria Gooshite, a good friend of mine. She's also a mom. She's a chemical engineer and she owns a business. Her company, Compliance Plus, provides environmental compliance services to industry. She's served as an elected official with the Newhall County Water District since 2003 and is currently the board vice president. In her spare time, she can be found playing in the dirt with her family and 3 rescue dogs while fighting off rattlesnakes.
Recently, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Welcome, Maria. Heather Miranda, very busy lady. She has worked in the environmental field since 1992 in both the public and private sector. She is a lead Green Building Accredited Professional, qualified SWIP, that's an acronym. I'm not going to try to explain that one. She's a SWIP developer and certified professional in stormwater quality. Currently, she works for the City of Santa Clarita Environmental Services Division. Her duties include stormwater permit compliance, watershed protection, river restoration, air quality improvement, energy management, and green buildings. He's very busy. Recent projects that you participated in include grant acquisition to support projects, electric vehicle charging stations, enhanced watershed management plan development, invasive plant removal from the Santa Clara River, Bouquet Creek restoration implementation, and working to implement energy efficiency projects with the Community Energy Partnership. She's a member of the CASQA Water Policy Task Force and has previously been a member of the League of California Cities Environmental Policy Committee. She has a master's degree of public administration from Cal State Northridge and a bachelor's degree in geography with an environmental science minor from CSU Long Beach.
Goodness.
What's that?
Go Beach.
Go Beach. All right. So let's welcome Heather. Matthew Dickens. He is currently the Resource Conservation Manager at the Valencia Water Company since 2010. Matt has 18 years of experience in both water and energy conservation, having worked as a water and energy conservation officer to the Los Alamos County Department of Public Utilities and Water Conservation Consultant for the cities of Albuquerque, Phoenix, Santa Fe, and Durango. Matt has worked with local, regional, national, and international conservation organizations and has presented energy conservation projects in Tokyo. Wow. Water conservation programs in Paris, and served on a national think tank regarding water conservation rate design at the Johnson Foundation at Wingspread in Racine, Wisconsin. Matt is currently the Vice Chair for the Research and Evaluation Committee for the California Urban Water Conservation Council, received his BA in Political Science from the University of New Mexico, and is a member of the Santa Clarita Sunrise Rotary Club. Okay, so I would like to now turn it over to our moderator, who's going to explain the format of this discussion. And I can sit down.
Yes, you do. Here, I'll trade waters with
I
you.
need that bell because I'm going to keep time.
Well, this is exciting. I actually wanted Frank to do this, but Frank's out of town with his daughter, and they're kicking butt up there. Yeah. Matt's excited about that. And we've already talked about the format, but I don't want to take a lot of time regarding that. But I've asked the panelists to keep their answers to about 1 minute. And that's why Greg is going to time, because we have about 12 questions and we want to get through this. And some of the questions we won't have to belabor very long, and some might be more stimulating and exciting. So we're going to just keep that all in check. And we're going to take turns with who I ask which question first. So it's not going to be attacking one person first all the time. Anyway, would you hand me the pen, please? Thank you. So I'm going to start off with Maria, if you wouldn't mind telling us about where does water come from?
Sure. Well, in this valley, about half of our water is local resources, groundwater, and some recycled water from the wastewater treatment plants. And about half of our water is imported water from Northern California, and our area purchases water off of the Central Valley project, which comes from the Sacramento Delta area. Contrary to popular opinion in LA, we do not get water from the Colorado River or Mono Lake. That is other areas of Southern California. So ours is mostly the Sacramento Bay Delta, and when you hear talk about that area, it has a big impact on our valley. The other thing I'll add about that is we talk about, everyone remembers Katrina and the levees. The Sacramento Bay Delta essentially channels runoff through earthen levees to Southern California. So if you think about Southern California's water supply being behind earthen levees like Katrina, it's the #1 at-risk infrastructure in the entire country, according to some civil engineers' opinions. So it's interesting where our water comes from.
Thank you, Maria. Would you like to elaborate, Matt?
Sure. Thank you for having us here today. It's a great topic to talk about. Water is very important. A famous quote said, water is for fighting and whiskey's for drinking. I don't know what's more important than water. I would just add to the conversation that, as our distinguishable representative mentioned, half of our water comes from the State Water Project system via Lake Oroville, is kind of the origin reservoir, which if you want to pay attention to that supply, you can look online at DWR, Department of Water Resources. The other half of our water comes from 2 groundwater sources, which is the alluvium aquifer, which is a shallow aquifer system, and then also the deep Saugus Formation aquifer, which holds a vast volume of water. So again, half of our water comes from surface water, State Water Project, half comes from groundwater, and we are working to develop recycled water, which currently feeds some golf courses and dedicated irrigation customers over near Magic Mountain.
Thank you, Matt.
I want to thank him for correcting me, because I said Central Valley Project. It's the state water project through the Central Valley, and it's early. I'm not awake yet.
Good clarity. Thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
And how about you, Heather? Do you have something to comment?
10 seconds, just, these are the water supply gurus here, so they know. But part of what I'm dealing with stormwater, it's important to remember that that groundwater element of it, much of it is recharged by the Santa Clara River. The Santa Clara River is roughly half of, I mean, the recycled water is an enormous amount, but the Santa Clara River, and it is a river, it is not the Wash. It is an actual river in the terms of rivers and southwest streams. It is really important for recharging our groundwater.
Thank you for that. It's very important. I don't know how much we do know about our river, and it's good to know how it affects. Okay. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask you, Heather, how is water distributed?
And I'm going to defer to my very knowledgeable colleagues on the
Okay.
right, because I'm not the distributed water
Okay.
person.
Go ahead, Maria.
So the water is distributed in a couple ways. The State Water Project water is distributed by our wholesaler, Castaic Lake Water Agency, who purchases water from the State Water Project and other banked projects up north. That water comes to the retail agencies, who then distribute it along with their groundwater to its customers. Something that people might find interesting, and I always was confused for a while, when our agencies talk about our reservoirs, we actually have tanks, not reservoirs, in this valley. So the tanks you see on the hillside are there to supply different communities, and the pipes essentially come to our customers' homes and businesses from there.
Cool.
And by the way, pumping is one of the largest costs of water distribution. The electricity and the pumping to move water is a significant part of our budget and a significant element of power use in California.
Thank you, Maria. What would you like to add to that, Matt?
Well, I asked my niece the other day, I was working on these questions, and she said that water comes from the pipes. And really it does come from pipes, power, and people. For Valencia Water Company, we have over 369 miles of distribution pipe within our service territory, delivering 9.5 billion gallons a year to over 30,000 meter customers. That's a significant amount of water when you look at about 30,000 acre feet. That's a football field 30,000 feet tall full of water. Every year we move that through this distribution system, which ironically we don't see. We have a river running underneath all of our streets to our homes, providing us clean, reliable drinking water day in, day out, so that we don't have to make that trip down to a well and carry tons of water ourselves to our homes. It's an amazing system to think that for Valencia, for example, we have 40 people delivering 9.5 billion gallons of water every year to this community, which is significant, because that's a trek. I carried 5 gallons 20 feet the other day. That's 40 pounds. And let me tell you, I was getting great exercise. But if that was our distribution system, I think water waste would be non-existent. Anyway, the distribution system is impressive for all of the water agencies here in Santa Cruz Valley.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to go back to Maria. How is water, who manages water distribution?
So as I mentioned, Castaic is the wholesale agency that buys the imported supplies. All of our communities are served by, I want to make sure I get this right, 4 retailers. So Newhall County Water District has a service area. They're all by service area, kind of like cable companies or power companies. Valencia Water has its own service area. Santa Clarita Water is a division of Castaic Lake Water Agency, and then District 36 from LA County Water Works serves the Val Verde area.
Oh, okay.
So we all purchase water from the wholesaler, and in general, we also all pump water. Some areas don't have as much well capacity. Matt might know District 36 is bringing on some wells. I don't know if they're on yet, but essentially we get it to the customer stores from the water districts, who are the ones that you see on your bill.
Thank you for that, Maria. Heather, would you like to comment on that?
I would only, I
I
as
know.
a water user, thank you for distributing the water really. But one of the things that we deal with a group called the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan Group, and it's where we're dealing with sewage and water supply and stormwater and flood control and stewardship of the river all together. And one of the things that has also come to light is that there, in the rural areas outside of the CLWA area, there are private wells, many of which are running dry up Bouquet Canyon, Acton, Agua Dulce areas. They are all on 100% well water. There's no CLWA distribution water in the Santa Clarita Valley there. There are many areas where you are all 100% on well water, and they are running out of water. So that's another.
So the table is really lowering since the drought.
Yeah, I know that.
Certain areas.
Yeah, up Bouquet, it's pretty dire. There's some really concerning, issues up there with some of those users.
That's good to know. Thank you. What would you like to elaborate on, Matt?
Well, I would just add that water is managed. Who manages the distribution of water? Water is managed from us as end users all the way to the state level. It's managed at so many different levels because it's a very important resource. It grows communities, it powers industry, it brings us food, it supplies us recreation. It provides so many functions that we take advantage of and really enjoy on a day in, day out basis. So for Valencia, our distribution system is managed by our operations department, and they do a fantastic job using computer integrated systems to manage well depth and pressure to make sure that water's, when you want to turn on the faucet and have water running, you have water running. Just a quick piece or a comment regarding the well drying up on the east side of town. That's kind of common hydrology as most water is moving towards the Pacific Ocean, now toward Ventura. So the first places that are going to be impacted on those shallow wells are going to be the east side of town. But they do recharge relatively quickly on a normal hydrology year. But we have to remember we are currently entering the 5th year of exceptional drought, and so that's going to impact our groundwater. But we have some good news, I think, in the pipeline, no pun intended.
Well, we'll tap into that. Good news in a moment, and I'm going to jot that down. Okay. We hope to have time for some questions from the group, too, from our guests before we finish. So if you have any questions, please jot them down. All right. I'm going to start with Heather. What is runoff, Heather?
Well, that's runoff, stormwater, urban runoff. You kind of hear these words, and essentially what it is rain that has hit the ground and moves towards a water body. That's really all it is. And in our community, all of our sidewalks, driveways, parking lots, streets, roads, everything is, when they're built and developed, they are tilted towards the street, and we have these little hole, the curb, the holes in the curb. Those are the storm drains, and they are designed to catch all that water that is tilted towards them, and they are connected via pipe directly to the Santa Clara River. It moves it quickly from the storm drain to the river to prevent flooding, and that's their only job. So the other part of urban runoff and what it does is that, as the chemical engineer person can tell me, water is lonely. It wants friends, and it is not particular. It is a perfect solvent, and it picks up every single thing it comes in contact with, just about.
Including children's toys.
Children's toys, tennis balls, copper dust from our brake pads, zinc from our tires, oil and grease from our cars, cigarette butts and litter. Not to be, we are in eating, but please pick up after your pets. Enough said. Anything that, the ice cream cone that that you've dripped onto the sidewalk, anything that is left on those hard surfaces will mix with water and connect into the storm drain system to the Santa Clara River, which recharges half of our drinking water, as we just discussed. So it is cleaned up before it's distributed, but it takes, as I'm sure everyone can attest to here, it costs a lot of money to take those chemicals out to a place where it's safe to drink. So prevention, ounce of prevention, pound of cure. So when we asked, don't litter, don't apply chemicals before rain, turn off your irrigation system after you've applied chemicals to your lawn, follow the directions, some is good, more is not better. Those types of things, when we have that message about urban runoff, that's why. Because water is lonely and it will pick up everything and it will end up in the Santa Clara River. It's physics, it will end up there.
Thank you, Heather. Would you like to elaborate on that, Matt?
Sure. From a conservation perspective, or a residential or dedicated irrigation, or an end-use perspective, irrigation runoff really refers to water that you use that leaves your property. It runs off into the sidewalks, gutters, streets, or somebody else's property. That's runoff. That could include emptying out a swimming pool through the storm drains, a spa, hot tub, or a hot water tank. Those are kind of common, but not the most common. The most common cause of irrigation or runoff is over-irrigation of our landscapes. What happens is, historically, we have tried to develop sprinkler irrigation systems that apply water at a rate that is far greater than what our soils can absorb. Most of us know our soil here in Santa Clara Valley is pretty much a clay or a clay loam, and therefore it absorbs water at a very slow rate, about 0.2 inches per hour. So anything over 0.2 inches per hour tends to run off. Most of our sprinkler systems run about 3 inches per hour. So that you do the math, you're looking at 2 to 4 minutes, you've got irrigation runoff. Most folks like the water in 10 minutes or 5 minutes, which means that runoff is going to be exacerbated. If you add a gravity or slope to somebody's landscape, that's going to also make that problem worse, and it's going to exacerbate it. There are solutions though. There are solutions such as using drip irrigation for watering hillsides that are not turf. There's using high efficiency irrigation or high efficiency spray nozzles that apply water at a slow rate. My yard, for example, I can water for 30 minutes without having runoff because it puts water out at 0.4 inches per hour instead of the 3 inches per hour. And of course, if you don't want to go through that level of investment, you can also employ a cycle and soak irrigation schedule. This basically means that you're going to run your irrigation system for 2 to 3 minutes, let that soak into the soil, wait an hour, run it again for another 2 to 3 minutes, as much as you think your plants need. You combine those techniques, you're going to keep your water on your property. That's really what we look at when we look at irrigation runoff. Keep your water on your property. Any water that leaves, obviously, is not being used, and it's an investment that you're paying for day in, day out that ends up contaminating or adding to potential contamination issues.
Thank you. Wow, that was perfect. I'm going to ask Maria if you could elaborate on that, if you will, but be brief so we can move through the questions, please.
I think to summarize what both Heather and Matt said, from an overarching viewpoint, I think we should feel lucky that we live in Santa Clarita, because we, unlike much of Los Angeles, have a lot of unpaved areas where we can benefit from recharge. So whether it be stormwater or urban runoff, that generally can go back into the groundwater table. The other thing I wanted to add on what Heather had said earlier about the water table itself, water is very regional, and all areas of California are different. If you are served by our water districts, we have an ample supply. There's many areas of California that do not have an ample supply. And much as we might check out school districts when you move, if you're moving into an area, check out the water supply, because water is very isolated. I like to use the example of different cups. I mean, this is the water table in California. Picture cups all over the place. Some are full, some are empty. And if you move in an area that doesn't have ample groundwater supply, they are going to be struggling for quite a while, especially if they're not connected to an alternative water source. So we're lucky we have good recharge. We're lucky we have good basic supply also.
Thank you for that addition. Matt, how much does water cost?
Well, that is a fantastic question, because that really comes down to many different components and many different perspectives. I'll talk about Valencia Water Company. Our water costs roughly about 1/5 of a penny for a gallon of water. That's incredibly a great deal. When we look at the 369 miles of distribution pipes, we look at the value that water provides to our community, the fact that we're getting it for roughly $1.60 for 748 gallons, I think the cup of coffee here is $1.60. So water is providing us a fantastic deal and value for us. For Valencia Water Company customers, on average, we're looking at about $40 a month when you take into account both the fixed costs, fixed meter charges, and then the water costs itself.
Very good, thank you. From Newhall Water Company perspective, please.
Just to frame
Maria.
it for everyone, outdoor irrigation is about 75% of our water use, if not a little more in a hot area like this. And so your water bill is going to vary depending on whether you live in an apartment or you have a horse ranch in Sand Canyon. I would say our range of water bills is about $20 a month up to well over $100, and it really depends on how much area you're irrigating, because the indoor use is quite low. A couple other points. Public water agencies like Newhall County Water District are nonprofit, so there is no excess cost. We try to be as efficient as we can and come in the black every year, and so you're getting a good value from a public water agency. The last point I wanted to make, which is an interesting thing to think of in this drought, we are the only business that is in business and has the state tell us to sell less of our product. Normally, water districts are completely standalone and independent. Under the governor's emergency regulations, we received additional mandates from the state that do not usually exist, where they told us to reduce our supplies in general around 25%. So that hit our budgets very quickly and in a matter of a month or two time. And a lot of people wondered, people like to joke, it's not a joke, why do your water bills go up when you ask us to use less water? It's because there's fixed costs, there are budget processes in place for infrastructure replacement, and when we're told to cut water use in 2 months' time by 25%, that affects the budget dramatically. Our district alone, which is one of the smaller districts in town, lost over $1 million in 1 year and had to pull from reserves. So
Wow.
The drought is hard on budgets too, and we have to keep providing a service while selling less product.
I think I just want to add, if I could, just
Sure.
one thing, because the cost of water is a really interesting perspective. We're talking about water bills to our customers, but I think it's also important to understand that there are different costs of water supplies. For example, our groundwater costs vary from agency to agency, but roughly around $200 an acre foot. An acre foot's about 325,851 gallons. If you look at state water project water, at least with our wholesale agency, it's about $500 an acre foot-ish. If you look at desal, and this is important, or recycled water, where a lot of folks have said, hey, why don't we just, during the drought, why don't you just provide more desal or provide recycled water? That's $1,900 an acre foot.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have, I think it's important to note that, because the folks are saying, hey, wait a second, I'm already paying $40 a month, and you're asking me to raise my bill to conserve. Well, if we had supplied those other supplies, your bill would have gone up by a factor of 3, or 4, or 6. But because we conserve, it's the cheapest alternative to making sure that we have can stretch our supplies to meet our demand. So unfortunately, because of the way costs are associated, if you do use more water as a community, it seems to make rates seem low, only because you're putting more units through that system and most of your costs are fixed. Inversely, if you conserve, you still have your fixed costs, but now you're moving less units through it. So the cost per unit actually appears to rise. But the reality is agencies are collecting the same revenue regardless of they're selling 10 million units or 20 million units.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Heather, How is the Santa Clara River important to us, to Santa Clarita citizens?
Oh, my favorite topic. Sorry, that bell's gonna ding, sorry.
I defer my time.
Since you went over the last one, that's a good idea.
My career in the city of Santa Clarita has really been dedicated towards the protection of the Santa Clara River. That's really the core of what I do. The Santa Clara River is critical to, it's not only beautiful in an open space area where we can go along paseos and observe nature, it is habitat to endangered species that are really not found in most of the rest of Southern California. It is a very special place. It is enormously rare and precious and wonderful. If you ever spend any time there, you see footprints of, mountain lions and coyotes. And when we've gone in to remove invasive species out of there, we get bobcats coming out of the river. And when we've restored the site, we get Bellesley's vireos that come and nest. These are, we have red-legged frogs and arroyo toads and stickleback and pond turtles and all sorts of wonderful creatures in nature just right there. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go up in the mountains. You can just go and look at it. So that's critically to me, from a spiritual perspective, that's why the Santa Clara River is important. It's also really important because it provides us half of our drinking water supply. I mean, it's half our drinking water supply. This is a pretty important river. It provides when we are unfortunate enough to have wildfires, it provides the fire break. So that's where the local firefighters direct the fire to protect our homes. It provides flood control for us. So so most of the time our neighborhood does not flood, or our businesses, because the Santa Clara River is there and it's in a relatively natural state. It's nice and wide and it's very sandy, and so it has an enormous amount of recharge. And so it provides us so much. And we don't even, a lot of people just think of it as the wash, the place to drive your roof tear off and dump it, and your water heater, which is why we go and clean it River Rally, those of you who, and I think we've seen the Rotary at the River Rally in the past, there are these just construction debris and, all these different things that are just it's just thought of as sort of the wash, but it's a typical southwestern stream in that the flow flows just below the surface, and the animals and the plants and the water companies know how to get to it. It's there. It's just below the surface. Because it's not the mighty Mississippi doesn't mean that it's not a valid river. It is a river. It is important, and it's critical to our existence as a community. So, sorry.
Thank you, Heather. Wow, that was great. Maria, would you like to share?
Yeah, I would, expand upon what Heather said, in that the river is a great asset to our valley, and one thing that we hope to do down the road, which is already being done in other areas like the Santa Ana watershed, is enhance its ability to recharge and bolster our groundwater table. And some ways that we could do that is slow the flow in heavy rain events while still providing flood protection, but slow down the flow so it has a chance to soak in our valley. Also, if you notice, the west side looks a lot greener and is much cooler on a hot summer day. By moving some recharge of sanitation district water upstream, we will enhance the water on the east side and green up the east side of the valley, and that can be done in conjunction with the slow the flow efforts. Essentially, we can possibly do spreading basins on the east side of the valley that'll allow that water to hit our groundwater table, will green up the habitat in that area, and let us reuse our sanitation district runoff, let us capture and hold more stormwater flow. So again, we're very lucky to have a natural river that will let us do that. And we're in very preliminary planning stages for that, but that'll be a good project for the valley if it goes through.
That's wonderful news. In fact, I'm just going to jump down to question 12 and ask Matt then, as a dovetail to what you just said, Maria. What is the current discussion regarding the merging of water companies in Santa Clarita Valley, and does it have anything to do with what she's talking about?
You know, I'll defer that question to the distinguishable representative.
Okay.
I don't really have much comment on the merging.
All right.
of the water agencies.
It's a fairly new topic, so I kind of threw that out there, but I wanted.
It's beyond the scope of conservation.
Well,
But it's important.
I can comment on that, Colleen, and for everyone's information, I mean, Heather also talked about integrated regional water management planning. That is a effort to bring agencies together to work on projects. From a water district potential merger standpoint, that would bring all of the water agencies under one umbrella. We hope to have a stronger voice on conservation projects like this, to really, I mean, be the point team on water in this valley. We already work together extremely well with the different water agencies. There's a lot of joint meetings, but a lot of directors think it's worth exploring a merger to eliminate different layers of management, to have a stronger voice in the face of ongoing drought, and to save costs. So we think it has potential. We will be we've already had a bunch of meetings. There's some more meetings coming up. This will be at minimum a year-long process going on, and it's in the paper periodically, but we're at exploratory stages, but that is very much part of the reason to do it, is to be a stronger united voice on water management in this valley, because there's a lot of agencies with their fingers in it, but we need to speak strongly for water protection.
Thank you for that.
You know,
Yes.
I will just add, from my experience, I lived in the city of Albuquerque when the city and the county, Bernalillo County, merged to form what is now a very long name, the Albuquerque and Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority. And when that organization formed as a decree of the state saying, hey, look, you two sit on the same aquifer, you're using that water, to think that they're different jurisdictions because of where your jurisdictions lie over that water table, to think that they're different is, you know, that's nonsensical in essence. And so those agencies did merge, and I can say that from that experience, that agency is stronger for it. It was a seamless merge, and they're still here a decade later providing a great resource in the city of Albuquerque. So that's just experience in terms of merging of agencies that I've
Well,
seen.
that's great to know. Thank you. It's encouraging. Heather, who decides what chemicals and their amounts are placed into the water?
Well, from a stormwater and urban runoff perspective, the community, the businesses, the residents, what you leave on your lawns, anywhere the rain can touch, it will take whatever's there. If it's in your backyard or your front yard, whether it's on your parking lot or on your roof. We get a lot of aerial deposition of pollutants, of oxides of nitrogen, for example, NOx, that deposit on the big roof structures. And when the rain mixes with that, then we get high nitrogen levels coming out of the water. So our citizenry, what I like to say is stormwater and urban runoff is the tea of modern living.
That's interesting.
Yum.
Because what we choose to put in the tea is up to us. And when I talk to kids in schools, I empower them. I you know, some people are like, oh, well, you're just, you know, trying to make them feel big. And it's true. Everybody's one thing matters. If everybody decides not to litter, if everybody decides to manage their chemicals, if everybody, you know, and not use them if possible, if everybody decides that they're going to be cautious about about where they use things and clean up after themselves and not expect the storm drain system to make it go away, because it doesn't go away, it's a closed system, it's better. If we all choose to litter and not pick up after our pets and not run our businesses responsibly, it gets worse. We are in charge. We are empowered. And I was just looking at your, it's,
Four-way test.
yeah, it's that. I mean, that's what it is, those are the choices that we each make every day. The cumulative effect of everyone's one thing either matters or doesn't is what happens to the Santa Clara.
Thank you, Heather. May I ask before you respond, Matt, specifically regarding possibly putting fluoride or more chlorine into the water, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'll give a general description of how water quality is regulated for urban water retail agencies, and that it starts at the Environmental Protection Agency, who establishes drinking water quality standards, basically saying here's a minimum level of certain things, materials, particulates, whatever it may be, that can be supplied to communities. That is regulated at another level, which is the State Water Resource Control Board's Department of Drinking Water, which basically has either equal standards or more strict standards. So what goes into our water supplies are, of course, there's natural occurring things, but water is treated. Decisions in terms of fluoride and whatnot are made at, I'm not sure what level those are made at. What I can say is that our water quality folks test so many samples every day, hundreds of samples, weekly and monthly, to make sure that our water supply is clean and reliable at almost every end use that you can imagine. So if you drink out of the hose, drink out of the hose, you're getting clean drinking water that you would get on one side of town, that you would get on the other side of town. So if you're interested in learning more about water quality standards, what our water makeup looks like, the Snake Lake Water Agency recently released their water quality report, which you can download and read at www.scdh2o.org.
Cool. Thank you. We are at the point of closing here, so if we've skipped over any questions, I do apologize for that. But I would like to open the discussion up for anyone in the group here that has a question that's burning. Yes, Steve. And you have a loud voice. You certainly don't need a microphone.
How do we recapture irrigation runoff water in the urban area?
And who would you like to direct that to?
Well, I would say whoever wants to answer it, but and if you're going to, after you answer that, I want to talk about invasive plants.
Go for it.
In the riverbed, because you referred to that. But let's talk about this runoff first. So I see in my own neighborhood, I have people watering their lawns, and some are better at being efficient and effective. Others are less effective. I know that we've been told by our own Matt Dickens that we can call and report said abusers, and hopefully that will help. But when we actually see runoff, and how can that be recaptured more effectively?
I'm glad you asked. We've spent the last 2.5, 3 years working collaboratively with LA County and LA County Flood Control District on developing a master plan called the Enhanced Watershed Management Program. And in that document, we were obligated to figure out how to bring the Santa Clara River into water quality standards for chemicals and bacteria. Okay, that was its job. And in that document, we figured out the less expensive source control measures that we could do, advanced street sweeping, things like that. And that was about 5% of the problem. And so the rest of it has to be treated or infiltrated. And so we have a master plan on how we are going to build these either low impact development green streets, so like curbs that are, instead of being concrete, they are planted, and as the water flows down the curb, it infiltrates into these planted areas, and then after a certain amount of water hits it, it bypasses to make sure we don't have flooding problems, and it will bypass beyond. So that's one of the things that we're working on implementing. The other thing we're working on implementing are these large-scale regional best management practices. I'm actually working on a grant right now that's due on Friday at 4 o'clock, so I gotta eat these eggs and go. But these large-scale regional BMPs are more of a neighborhood scale, and they look more like a detention basin in a lot of cases where you've seen those flow control detention basins. Some of them are built underneath a play surface, so there are these large concrete tables, and the water goes underneath, and you can plant the play area on top. Some of them are wetlands, but it captures both the dry weather and the dry weather flow over watering, and then the wet weather flow. In this valley, based on the information we have now, it may change when we redo it in a couple of years, but the information that we have now, we have to infiltrate over 600 acre feet of stormwater per rain event, not per year, every time it rains, in order to hold that in, infiltrate it, get rid of the copper, the zinc, the bacteria, and some of the trash and some of the other things, every time it rains. So we have to find new places to put into the ground.
Amazing answer. Thank you.
Can I add to that? In terms of controlling irrigation runoff, since the drought was declared in January of 2014, Valencia Water Company customers, and I know all the agencies in the valley have responded to the call to conserve, but specifically for Valencia Water Company customers, our customers reduced their water usage by 4.9 billion gallons of water since January. And remember, we serve about 9.5, so you're looking about half a year of water saved. That tends to be irrigation savings, which will accumulate and contribute to irrigation runoff. So I would encourage everybody to make sure, self-certify that you have no irrigation runoff. What a great way to control irrigation runoff. Let's keep that water in our water tables to use for needed purpose rather than waste and inefficient practices. Plus, that'll help contribute to reducing the costs of contamination and whatnot from stormwater runoff. All that water takes all that stuff that Heather talked about and takes it right into our water supply. So LID, or the low impact development, what a great new management tool that we have. I mean, the issue used to be, hey, we want to get water away from your property. That's the way we're going to manage our community. We want everything to shed water away from your property. And now we would put that into our water system or into our stormwater drains and whatnot. Now we're trying to say, hey, let's keep that water in our community.
Property, yeah.
Let's, of course, conserve water and be efficient in our practices so that we don't have those issues exacerbated. But again, self-certify, make sure that irrigation runoff is not happening at your homes.
I have to elaborate on that if you don't mind, because it was just last year that we decided to pull out all grass, and it's a very exciting thing to do. We did get a $1,000 rebate because we barely made the 500 square feet requirement from the rebate requirement to do that. But we have been rated super efficient on our bill every month, which is awesome. And I don't see a single bit of runoff. And that's just because we use tubing that is underground, drip, on the entire property. And that tubing doesn't cost that much. In fact, it's so awesome to see everything thrive without runoff. In fact, what happens with the tubing on a schedule that is smaller doses but more frequently allows the ground to absorb. The plants send their roots deeper so that they are not just reaching to the top for water, and it secures the trees better and all the plants are thriving. So it's a really awesome thing I'm just happy that we've done it because it's saved us. It's on our water bill and it's a good thing. Perfect. We're going to have to close this meeting. I'm sorry. One more question.
Yeah, I live on a cul-de-sac in Valencia, and there's like this last 7 houses, 6 of us have swimming pools. And I've never seen the water companies put out anything. Like something happened, like an earthquake in Sacramento, sounds like I should worry more about that than everything down here.
Actually,
But
probably is.
my question is, what would be the proper thing to do with the pool water? You know, I know you take it in, you keep it from almost and all that, but should I add chemicals to it to keep it somewhat, you know, clear and bacteria free, or should I just let it go and then boil it before I drink it? What would I do with something like that? I've never seen any literature or anything.
Well, I think what I can answer in terms of pools is, of course, proper best practices for conserving water for pools. And that would be having a pool cover that you minimize evaporation losses, but also make sure that if you have an auto refill, make sure that's functioning properly. We can't tell you how many times we have customers with incredibly high water bills because their pool refill valve is stuck. It's just constantly filling up and draining into the drain. Now, in terms of draining, there are strict requirements. A lot of folks like to put that into the curbside drain, and I believe that that's not the best practice. What the sanitation district said is that you want to put that into your washout, your sewer system, because they can treat that water, as opposed to putting that supply into the stormwater system. That's at least what they said. But
if you were talking, it sounded like you were asking, can you drink it after an earthquake? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I was asking, what would be, should I use chemicals to keep it, you know, bacteria free, or should I just let it go and just keep boiling it before I drink it and use it for other things?
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of people that want our water.
Well, I would say, you know, a couple things. Our water district did not lose water in the earthquake in the '94, which was pretty severe.
No, I said in Sacramento.
If there's and that's a good segue to what I wanted to close with, is our valley has a 3-year backup supply and has quite a broad portfolio of sources. We will be okay for at minimum 6 months to a year after a full interrupt of the state water project. So we will not be needing to drink our pool water, hopefully. If not, you know, we'll be facing zombies and everything else at that time, by the time we're drinking pool water. But I think I would say, you know, immediate after a localized earthquake, you want to have supplies in your home. The water agencies have mutual aid agreements with other water agencies. So any impact should be localized, maybe a week of water loss interruption, where you have, you know, are going to have trouble finding stuff to drink, and that's where you want to supply your own home. But after that, we'll either be bringing the supplies back on quickly, we'll have water trucks available for areas that can't be connected, maybe that had localized pipe breaks. And in the event of a statewide issue, we actually are pretty well backed up with other resources that we shouldn't be drinking our pools, hopefully. And I wouldn't encourage that. I mean, I would definitely boil it or find another source before you drink it.
Flushing toilet.
Flushing toilets is a good one, yes.
Or get an earthquake.
I have one last question.
Two real quick ones. I'm super efficient on my water usage, but I now have 3 trees dying. Is that my brown thumb, or is that lack of water? And second question, are we budgeted like in Valencia Water District for infrastructure? Because again, I'm in a 50-year-old track, my water line broke recently, which tells me the whole track is getting to that age, you know? So that's question 1, question 2.
Great
Brown
questions.
thumb or green thumb?
Tough to say.
Yeah.
I mean, the drought has definitely had a pretty devastating impact on a lot of folks' landscape. We do have messaging that we've put out to help folks manage and maintain their trees, drip irrigation. You've seen the city convert all of their spray irrigation on their medians to drip irrigation to save their trees. So definitely there's some things you can do to help maintain those trees. I'm not really sure whether it's a ground thumb. It could be a combination.
I would contact an arborist, because there's a massive pest infestation that's happening also as a result, that's getting, because it's being exacerbated by the drought, but we're losing trees too. And the only way to know is to get a tree expert out there, because if they're big enough too, and if they're dying, they could be dangerous. To your home or to others. So I would get a professional out there and look and see if it's just a watering thing or if there's an actual infestation.
On the second point of your question, The water agencies maintain the distribution system all the way up to the meter and the meter. Anything past that point is the responsibility of the homeowner. So if your main lines were having issues, then that's something that those are responsibilities of each individual homeowner.
Repairman said about 70% of the breaks are on your side rather than the homeowner.
Then those would be repaired by the water agency if they're on our side of the meter.
But the question maybe is, how do you prevent a break? Or how, is there a way to,
Are you budgeted
for the infrastructure repairs?
infrastructure?
Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah, we have budgets to repair, replace
And
infrastructure. Absolutely.
in Newhall Water District, about 10% of our budget is capital replacement. We are able to monitor for leaks to determine which main lines are seeping before they blow. Most lines, ours are mostly steel lines or iron, and will go 50 to 100 years in life, and then there's planned replacement. We can also evaluate them by monitoring, I don't want to call it radar, but there's a system where they can judge the thickness of the pipe to see if it needs replacing rather than just ripping it out, you know, ahead of time. We watch it to see and replace it. So water districts, that's an important, and that's an element of the budget that continues even if we have to tell everybody to cut back water use. Pipes still get old. So that's an example of a budget item that doesn't go down even in a drought.
Thank you so much for coming to Rotary and participating in this panel discussion. It's really exciting. I'm very appreciative of your passion. It's obvious that you, all three of you, have, I think, inspired us. You have inspired me with your passion regarding the river, the watershed, how we manage our water situation, and we'll revisit this subject again, I'm sure, and it's an exciting subject. And thank you so much for being our panelists today. Let's give them all a hand. Thank you.